I think frustrates me more than anything is when you have individuals who at one point cut USAID and they champion it and they raise their hand and run around and jump up and down, and in the next quote they're quoting Bible scripture. And the hypocrisy of it is astounding to me. But even more importantly, I think that this is one of the largest foreign policy blunders that we've made as a country in a very long period of time. Because what happens when we leave, that soft power leaves these regions? We're talking about North Africa and Egypt, right? We're talking about Sudan. We're talking about these places. It doesn't just go away. What happens is our adversaries, China, Russia, Iran, they go in and fill these voids, right? They utilize that soft power. And so, yeah, particularly in Africa where we have withdrawn because of Elon Musk, China is in Africa right now developing soft power. You have terrorist organizations in Africa right now providing those resources, and then you're just going to say, oh, I just like the images of little black and brown babies that are starving.
So I have a statement from the State Department. It says foreign assistance continues to arrive in Sudan, including humanitarian assistance. Given the massive needs, we call on other countries to step up and increase their contributions to the humanitarian response. We reiterate the need for parties to enable humanitarian assistance, ensure the safety of humanitarian workers, and protect civilians. But I just want...
It is a curious thing, is it not, that those who defend the machinery of government programs like USAID so often cloak their arguments in the garb of moral superiority, as if questioning their efficacy is tantamount to questioning one's humanity. The recent CNN panel discussion on the closure of USAID under the Trump administration, with its breathless accusations and vivid imagery of babies through a wood chipper, is a case study in how emotion can substitute for reason and how selective outrage can obscure a sober reckoning with facts. Let us unpack this not with the fervor of a television panel, but with the clarity of thought that the subject demands. The CNN panel began with a flourish of indignation as if the closure of USA were an act of wanton cruelty rather than a policy decision worthy of scrutiny. One panelist claimed that ending the agency equates to putting babies through a wood chipper is not an argument, it is a tantrum dressed up as compassion. Why do we so readily accept such hyperbole as a substitute for analysis? Emotional appeals, however vivid, do not tell us whether a program achieves its stated goals or merely squanders resources on bureaucratic bloat. To invoke starving children as a shield against criticism is to engage in moral blackmail, a tactic as old as it is disingenuous. It assumes that the mere existence of suffering obligates the perpetuation of a specific government agency regardless of its track record. Consider this. In 2023, USAID's own Inspector General reported that funds intended for humanitarian aid in certain regions had been diverted to groups with ties to terrorist organizations. This is not a trivial matter. When money meant to feed the hungry ends up in the hands of those who perpetuate violence, are we still to believe that the agency's existence is beyond reproach? The panel's outrage sidesteps this inconvenient truth, preferring instead to paint critics as heartless, but who is truly heartless? Those who question the misuse of taxpayer dollars, or those who defend a system that, however unintentionally, fuels chaos abroad. The panel's defense of USAID rests on a deeper assumption that foreign aid, as administered by this agency, is inherently virtuous. But is it? The history of foreign aid is not a tale of unalloyed success. Since its founding in 1961, USAID has disbursed billions of dollars, often with lofty goals: poverty reduction, democracy promotion, economic development. Yet study after study, from the World Bank to independent auditors, has shown that much of this aid fails to reach its intended recipients or achieve its stated aims. For 2019, for instance, a Government Accountability Office report found that USAID's oversight of funds in high-risk regions was so lax that millions were unaccounted for. Unaccounted for. This is not charity, it is negligence. Why then do we assume that the agency's intentions absolve its failures? Good intentions not feed children, nor do they build stable economies. The panel's insistence on USA's sanctity ignores the reality that foreign aid often props up corrupt regimes, distorts local markets, or fosters dependency. In Haiti, for example, decades of aid have left the country no closer to self-sufficiency, with local farmers undercut by subsidized imports and NGOs operating as parallel governments. Is this the humanitarianism we are meant to defend without question? The assumption that more aid equals more progress is a triumph of hope over evidence. This brings us to a central fallacy in this hearing discussion, the conflation of foreign aid with humanitarianism itself. To question USAID's budget or its very existence is not to deny the existence of suffering or the moral imperative to help. It is to ask whether this particular vehicle, riddled with inefficiencies, political agendas, and a track record of mixed results, is the best way to do so. The panelists would have us believe that the choice is binary: fund USAID or abandon the world. But why must we accept this false dichotomy? Private charities, faith-based organizations, and even direct cash transfers have shown in many cases greater efficacy than government-led programs. In 2020, a study by the Center for Global Development found that direct cash transfers to impoverished households in Africa yielded measurable improvements in health and education outcomes, often at a fraction of the cost of traditional aid programs. Why then are we so wedded to a bureaucratic model that prioritizes process over results? The panel's rhetoric suggests that without USAID, the world would descend into chaos, as if no other nation, organization, or individual could step into the breach. This is not just patronizing, it's a denial of human agency. It assumes that the poor of the world are helpless without Washington's largesse, and that America alone bears the burden of global salvation. Such thinking is not only unsustainable, but also dangerously self-aggrandizing. The panelists' appeal to soft power is another point worth dissecting. They argue that USAID is essential for counterattacking Russian influence abroad, as if the mere act of spending money buys loyalty or prestige. But soft power is not a function of dollars spent. It is a function of trust earned. When USA funds programs that promote divisive ideological agendas such as DEI or LGBTQIA plus advocacy in culturally conservative nations, does it hit hard to find, or is it a very population that can serve? In 2022, USA only reports of backlash, several actions over programs.
Cartel soldiers, possible links to Marabunta Grande and Duggan personnel. Both pilots. They are hostile to each other and us. We need to evacuate this area and regroup. Stat.
Have arguably done more to protect American ingenuity than any government. When a Starlink satellite provides internet access to a remote village, it does so without string attached, without political incentives, and without the bureaucratic overhead of a federal agency. Why then do we assume that government-led agencies
I thought I was dead back there for sure.
How
the heck did you find me? Recent GPS locks in my car? That was good work. They told me I was heading to a deal. Figured it's business as usual. No clue they'd need me. I just had time to map it out, and the next thing I know, there's a black bag over my head. I think they were trying to sell me as leverage to the cartel. I don't know what the hell happened. The deal went south, people started dropping left and right. You got there just in time. Shit.
Clean energy,
So are you new?
space exploration, and global connectivity.
Thank you anyway.
Then many government
Just give me a
programs
second to get my
claim
shit together, okay?
this tactic of personal vilification is not new. It is the same reflex that leads critics to accuse USAID's
So I'm guessing you're on the
of
Duggan up?
hypocrisy for quoting
Let me tell you, this
scripture
stuff
while
is deep.
supporting
Way
cuts.
deeper
But why
than
is it
I was
hypocritical
predicted.
to question
It's got
the
literal
wisdom
written
of
all
the
over
government
it.
program
I'm so
while
close to
holding
putting it
no
all together before my
principles?
cover got
The
blown. Anyway,
Bible
here's
does
what I
not
can tell you.
demand
The
us to
Duggans are
fund
putting together some
unaccountable
kind of
bureaucracy.
next-gen
It
computer
calls
software.
us
That's
here
how they're
for the
fixing the
poor.
price of gas. This thing is exploiting backdoors everywhere, including the goddamn Ballsack data center. It's manipulating trade prices, supply, demand, shipment delays, rating agencies, public oversight mechanisms, you name it. It's even pushing panic buying using bots on social media. The Duggins already have most of the tech they need, and they're out to buy even more from the FIB's confiscated items. Whatever's going on, we need to move on it
Yet how much of
fast.
that money actually reaches those in need? Audits have shown that administrative costs and contractor fees often consume a significant portion of aid budgets. In some cases, less than 20 cents on the dollar reaches the intended recipients. Is this what we call compassion? When we pour billions into programs that the consultants or prop up corrupt governments, are we helping the poor or are we subsidizing the rich? The panelists acknowledge that USA needs reform, but recoil at its closure. Why then do they assume that reform is always preferable to starting anew? If a house is riddled with termites, sometimes it is wiser to rebuild than to patch the walls. The closure of USA does not mean the end of American aid. It means a chance to rethink how we deliver it. The panel's fear of change betrays a deeper fear that scrutiny might expose the sacred cow of foreign aid
We've got a lot of
as
heat.
less
Lose
sacred
them now.
than they believe.
We can't have
Finally,
local
we
law
must
enforcement
ask,
all over
is it
this.
truly in America's national interest to fund programs that often yield questionable results? The panelists speak of global leadership, but leadership is not measured by how much we spend, but by how wisely we act. Pouring money into unstable regions without clear accountability risks not only waste, but also entanglement in conflicts that do not serve our interests. When USA funds projects in countries with authoritarian regimes, are we advancing democracy or are we subsidizing oppression? When we prioritize symbolic gestures over measurable
a little
outcomes,
faint.
are we leading
Could you
or
take
are
me to
we
the hospital?
posturing?
Debrief's
The
gonna have to
national
wait.
interest demands that we weigh costs against benefits, not that we cling to programs out of habit or sentiment. If the goal is to help the world's poor, let us do so in ways that are effective, transparent, and aligned with American values, not with the ideological fads of the moment. If the goal is to counter foreign adversaries, let us do so with clarity of purpose, not with blank checks. The CNN panel discussion
Thanks.
of USA's
Again.
exposure
Hopefully my
reveals
intel
more
fills in
about
some of the
state
blanks.
our
I'm sure you'll get a
decisions
copy
about
of the
the
mission
agency
report.
itself. And it's a discourse that prizes
Successfully
emotion
undertaken
over
fieldwork
evidence,
in
optics
temperatures
over
of
outcome,
100
and moral
degrees. I'm
posturing
giving you
over
a
moral
direct order to
clarity.
take a shower
To
before
question
your next
USA
report
is
for
not to
duty.
turn our backs on
But
the
for
world's
today,
suffering.
that was some
It is to
fine
demand
work,
that our
Agent.
efforts to alleviate it be worthy of the task. The closure of USA is not the end of compassion, but an opportunity to rethink how we express it. Let us not be swayed by cries of babies through a wood chipper or accusations of heartlessness. Let us instead ask the hard question. What works? What doesn't? And what serves the cause of human dignity, not just in words, but in deeds? Reason, not rhetoric, must guide us. For in the end, it is not the volume of our outrage, but the wisdom of our choices that will shape a better world.